Hi everyone, I'm Anita Sharma. You're watching AnewZ live from Baku. Here's what's making news right now. The UN's World Food Program warns fighting in Syria could displace 1.5 million people. The former Turkish ambassador is appointed as the new Secretary General of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Romania's constitutional court will annul the first round of presidential elections. We begin with the UN's World Food Program. It says fighting in Syria threatens to displace 1.5 million people. The agency warns the crisis is worsening at an alarming rate.
The humanitarian situation in Syria is rapidly deteriorating, with recent escalations in the northwest forcing 280,000 people to flee their homes since November 27th. The World Food Programme's Samir Abdel-Jabir shared dire projections during a press conference in Geneva.
So in the first few hours after the 27th of November, we saw that the number went up from 48,000 to almost 280,000 people who got displaced so far. And if the situation continues evolving in that pace, we're expecting collectively around 1.5 million people that will be displaced and will be requiring our support.
The World Food Programme's representative emphasized the severity of the crisis, describing it as a crisis layered upon an existing one. Years of conflict have already left 12.9 million Syrians food insecure, with over 3 million severely so. Now many displaced people are left without basic necessities, including food and shelter.
It's at the breaking point at the moment in Syria. After 13 or 14 years of conflict, over 3 million Syrians are severely food insecure and cannot afford enough food, and malnutrition is at global levels, emergency levels.
As the conflict rages on, the United Nations is calling for urgent funding to assist the displaced populations and prevent the crisis from spiraling further.
Still in Syria, rebels take control of Hama following their recent victory in Aleppo. Opposition forces claim they successfully drove the Syrian military out of Hama, marking another milestone in their rapid advancement across the north.
The capture of Hama happens just days after rebels seized the northern city of Aleppo and pushed south from their stronghold in northwest Syria. Opposition forces claim they ousted the Syrian military from Hama in their latest victory during a rapid advance across the country's north. The Syrian army, however, states that it redeploys outside the city to preserve civilian lives and prevent urban combat. This marks a significant blow to President Bashar Assad and his allies. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres calls on all those with influence to help the long-suffering people of Syria and reminds all parties of their obligation under international law to protect civilians.
Now, this latest offensive was launched into government-controlled areas by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, a group sanctioned by the Security Council, along with a broad range of other armed opposition groups. It has led to significant shifts in the front lines, and tens of thousands of civilians are at risk in a region already on fire. We are seeing the bitter fruits of a chronic collective failure of previous de-escalation arrangements to produce a genuine nationwide ceasefire, or a serious political process to implement Security Council resolutions.
Turkey's National Security Council, led by President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, expresses strong support for Syria's unity and stability. The Council pledges to fight terror groups threatening both Syria and Turkey, calls for peace through reconciliation between the Syrian government and opposition forces.
كونوا كحزب الله إلى جانب سوريا.
Hezbollah leader Naim Qassem also states that his group will stand alongside Syria to thwart the goals of this aggression.
Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's grip on power continues to weaken as armed groups continue to capture more territory from government forces. Following last week's surprise capture of Aleppo, the rebels, led by the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, continue to move south towards Damascus as the Syrian army falls back after retreating the strategic city of Hama. Governments across the Middle East are monitoring the situation very closely amid concerns over further destabilization in that region. From Tel Aviv, we get more now from our correspondent, Trent Murray.
Well, the sheer speed of this HTS-led lightning offensive in Syria has really caught many people in this region by surprise, including here in Israel. We are being told that the top brass from the Israeli Defence Force has been holding situation assessments here at the IDF HQ in Tel Aviv, keeping a very close eye on what is going on and also briefing senior members of the government, including the Defence Minister. Of course, what happens in Syria is of real consequence for Israel, given that they do share a fairly lengthy border. We are being told that the IDF has called up some additional troops to be placed on that border, given the situation, just to be placed on standby for any sort of instability. But I think of real consequence for the Israelis is what Iran does in all of this. They don't want to see Iranian forces up near their border in Syria. We are being told that through back channels they have sent a warning to Tehran not to send forces into Syria and, crucially, not to send weapons in that could be smuggled over to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Now, speaking of Hezbollah, we are tracking earlier today several airstrikes on land border crossings between Lebanon and Syria. The IDF says they were behind that. They hit those crossings, in their view, in order to try and prevent weapons being sent again into Lebanon from Syria. But really, I think for the Israelis, just like many in this region, they are just waiting and watching to see what happens next. Israeli officials have told the Axios news outlet in the US that the sheer speed has really caught them by surprise and that they expected the government forces of Bashar al-Assad to put up a stiffer defence. But according to Israeli intelligence, those forces and those defence lines of Bashar al-Assad's forces are crumbling much faster than they thought. Trent Murray for AnewZ, Tel Aviv.
French socialist leader Olivier Faure insists on a left-wing prime minister as President Emmanuel Macron seeks to form a new government. Faure told Macron his coalition would only support a left-wing prime minister. He urged the president to consult other leftist groups to end the gridlock caused by Michel Barnier's ousting. Macron has rejected calls to resign and is expected to name a new prime minister soon. France's Socialist Party is urging President Macron to appoint a left-wing prime minister, highlighting demands for reforms and criticizing his lack of consultation with other leftist groups. Let's get more now from our Paris correspondent, Ross Cullen.
Well, the French president is continuing his search for a new prime minister on Friday, meeting with the heads of different political parties to try to find a compromise solution. He hosted talks with the leaders of the moderate left, the Socialist Party, at the Élysée Palace, and those politicians came out afterwards and briefed the press on what had gone on, their discussions with President Macron. They said that he had not imposed any preconditions on any subject and that he was willing also to speak to other parties on the left, so the Green Party and the far-left France Unbowed Party as well. We've heard from the leader of Emmanuel Macron's group in Parliament, the former Premier Gabriel Attal, and he says that he and other centrist MPs are willing to work with the moderate left and to work with the moderate right to try to build a coalition. Emmanuel Macron, in the televised address he gave on Thursday, did say he was looking for a government representing all political forces. However, the Interior Minister, who comes from the moderate right, has ruled out all possible coalitions with the left. So it demonstrates there are entrenched positions in French politics, and it is going to be very difficult for the president to appoint a prime minister and then a government that can command a majority of support among MPs in the National Assembly. Ross Cullen, AnewZ in Paris.
As global tensions escalate, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe moves forward with a very significant leadership change. Former Turkish ambassador Feridun Sinirlioğlu has been appointed as a new Secretary General, a move aimed at restoring balance and security across Europe.
Feridun Sinirlioğlu's appointment as Secretary General of the OSCE marks a pivotal moment in international diplomacy. His three-year term was unanimously approved by all 57 member states, a rare display of unity even from Turkey's historic rivals, Greece, Cyprus and Armenia. Sinirlioğlu's rise to the top comes at a time when Ankara is working hard to repair relations with its neighbors, including Greece and Armenia, after decades of tension. As part of a broader diplomatic effort, Turkey has improved ties with NATO ally Greece and is seeking to normalize relations with Armenia. However, the road ahead remains fraught with challenges. The OSCE has struggled with decision-making paralysis since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, as Western and Eastern nations remain at an impasse. Sinirlioğlu's leadership will focus on navigating this complex divide and revitalizing the OSCE's core mission. Turkey has long sought to play an active role in conflict resolution, maintaining close ties with both Kiev and Moscow. Sinirlioğlu, who has already brokered peace talks, will be instrumental in steering the OSCE through turbulent geopolitical waters.
The Ukrainian president addresses troops and military leaders on the Day of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky emphasized that the Ukrainian army is a country's true guarantor of security rather than international agreements like the Budapest Memorandum signed 30 years ago to give up nuclear arms in exchange for security guarantees from major world powers. Zelensky presented awards to the families of fallen soldiers and serving military personnel, honoring their service.
Понад 1000 днів битви за державу.
Over 1,000 days of battle for the state, over 700,000 enemies killed. For us, they have no names, no honor, and they deserve nothing other than shame. That's how they will go down in history. Today, we understand clearly that the real, the most important, the most reliable guarantee of our security are the armed forces of Ukraine.
Збройні сили.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is in Minsk, Belarus, for a summit with President Alexander Lukashenko to strengthen their alliance. The leaders will sign a mutual security treaty and other agreements following Russia's extended nuclear umbrella over Belarus and the deployment of tactical nuclear missiles there last year. Speculation also surrounds the possible deployment of Russian ballistic missiles. The summit coincides with the 25th anniversary of the Union State, a borderless alliance between Russia and Belarus. Meantime, Abkhazia, Georgia's breakaway region, warns about severe economic issues after Russia stopped providing financial aid. Local authorities say remaining funds are being redirected to purchase electricity from Russia. Financial officials warned that salary payments will soon be unfeasible. Abkhazia's economic troubles started back in September when Russia halted financial support, citing Abkhazia's failure to align its local laws for deeper integration with Moscow. Abkhazia, a region with a history of geopolitical complexities, is now facing new challenges. Shifting demographics, regional tensions, and external influences are reshaping its dynamics. To explore these developments and their broader impact, very pleased now to be joined by political analyst Levan Mamoladze. Let's take a closer look.
In Abkhazia, the current situation is comprised of several components. Everyone must understand that Abkhazia is governed by clans and clan-based groups. These include the Gudauta clan, the Ochamchira clan, and others. Abkhazia is now entering a very complex period. If a census were conducted, which hasn't been done, it might reveal that a majority of the population is now Armenian. This is yet another distinct group. The Armenian population in Abkhazia has grown significantly since the end of the Karabakh War and Azerbaijan's restoration of its territorial integrity. Many Armenians emigrated to Abkhazia after that. This creates a complicated situation in Abkhazia. The Abkhaz people are reluctant to cede their authority over the use of land to so-called Russian investors. Russia has also realized that this is not an easily governed territory. Historically, we lived together, and we know the Abkhaz people well. Georgia has always taken these nuances into account. I don't want to directly say that what is happening in Georgia is connected to Abkhazia. However, it is related to the fact that Georgia has decided not to play the game the West is proposing to us. All the Maidan-style unrest in Tbilisi, the vandalism and the violence by demonstrators were part of a single plan, a scenario of so-called revolutions. But this will not succeed. The authorities are taking measures. It is deceptive to claim that firing fireworks and pyrotechnics at police is democracy, while police arresting instigators is violence. This is completely wrong and represents the narrative the West is promoting. Therefore, Georgia has decided not to participate in these games. Georgia has chosen not to be exploited. We have seen what happened in Ukraine with Ukrainization. We want peace. The majority of Georgians have chosen to support the strengthening of our sovereignty. That is the process we are currently undergoing. This is interconnected with regional issues, including Abkhazia and South Ossetia. One could say that Georgia has not taken steps against Russia and has not entered into direct confrontation with it, despite Russia's efforts to create tensions with the West. We have not imposed direct sanctions on Russia because they are our neighbors. Although some territories are occupied, we understand the importance of accounting for these nuances. Georgia wants peace and good neighborly relations. In light of these trends, Russia is also considering measures and steps toward reconciliation, resolving conflicts and fostering peace. This would allow Georgia to engage in direct contact with the Abkhaz and Ossetians to address these problems. The focus is not on political solutions yet. That stage must be reached in time. We do not want anyone to use this as an opportunity to provoke new confrontations in Skin Valley or Sukhumi. Thus, the resolution of Abkhazian and other territorial conflicts on our land will proceed within this context. We will see what steps Russia takes. We hope they will not obstruct progress, but instead facilitate it. We have initiated dialogue with the Abkhaz and the Ossetians and hope to finally close these conflicts. Political solutions will mature and come later.
Romania's constitutional court annuls the first round of presidential elections just 2 days ahead of a planned runoff between far-right Călin Georgescu and centrist pro-EU Elena Lasconi. The court ordered a repeat of the entire electoral process. The decision is final and cannot be appealed. It comes after the declassification of the secret reports by the Romanian intelligence services alleging the involvement of foreign state actors in influencing voters through an anti-Western propaganda campaign supporting Georgescu. According to the documents, Romania was the target of a, quote, aggressive Russian hybrid action on the day and night of the presidential elections on November 24th. 25,000 TikTok accounts were also allegedly used to increase the popularity of Georgescu, possibly through the use of, quote, bot farms in the electoral campaign. Now to a setback for TikTok in the United States. A federal appeals court upholds a law that could ban the app unless it cuts ties with its Chinese owner, ByteDance, by January. The United States Court of Appeals ruled the law protects national security, citing concerns over user data and potential manipulation by the Chinese government. TikTok denies the claims and plans to appeal to the Supreme Court. If upheld, the law could lead to App Store bans and restricted access in the U.S., reigniting debates over data privacy and foreign influence. However, TikTok is expected to appeal to the Supreme Court. The political situation in South Korea remains tense. This after President Yoon Suk-yeol failed to impose martial law. Ongoing protests demand his impeachment, escalating the crisis.
Protests in South Korea persist, calling for President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment after his failed attempt to impose martial law. The crisis deepens with military involvement and accusations against lawmakers intensifying pressure on Yoon's leadership. Protesters, led by labor unions like the Korean Federation of Trade Unions, continue to demand president's impeachment, carrying slogans condemning his martial law as a betrayal of democracy. Ruling party leader Han Dong-hoon revealed Yoon had ordered the arrest of politicians deemed anti-state forces during the martial law period, further complicating the crisis. South Korea's Special Warfare Commander Kwak Jung-kyun stated he would refuse any future martial law orders. He also revealed that the former defense minister had ordered the military to forcibly remove lawmakers voting against the martial law declaration. The president's decree temporarily granted military control, banning protesters and political actions. He accused the opposition Democratic Party of acting against the state and supporting North Korea. The decree was reversed within hours after public outcry.
Former German Chancellor Angela Merkel testifies before a parliamentary committee investigating Germany's role in the chaotic 2021 Afghanistan withdrawal.
Germany's involvement in Afghanistan ended abruptly on August 15, 2021, when the Taliban seized Kabul. The German government, including then-Chancellor Angela Merkel, did not anticipate the rapid Taliban takeover, leading to a chaotic evacuation of German citizens and Afghan allies. Since 2022, a Bundestag inquiry has been investigating the mistakes behind the withdrawal, with Merkel as the final witness. The ex-chancellor reiterated that the mission was meant to prevent terrorist attacks from Afghanistan. Angela Merkel acknowledged that foreign governments failed to meet key objectives, such as promoting the rule of law and women's rights. She also pointed to cultural misunderstandings, nepotism, and drug trafficking as reasons for the failure. She admitted being initially reluctant to evacuate Afghan development workers, fearing it would signal that Germany was abandoning Afghanistan. Merkel's testimony aligned with her former colleague Helge Braun, who defended the Federal Intelligence Service for underestimating the Taliban's quick takeover. The inquiry is focused on the decision-making process and coordination between German government departments and international partners. Committee Chair Ralph Stegner highlighted the need to question Angela Merkel about United States negotiations under Presidents Donald Trump and Joe Biden, especially concerning the conditions tied to troop withdrawals.
Bedingungen knüpft an den Abzug der Truppen.
Questions will have to be asked about the duty of care towards the local German forces, about the preparations for the evacuation operation, and also about the findings of the Federal Intelligence Service as to whether everything was as it should have been.
Meantime, former United States President Donald Trump continues to criticize the U.S. withdrawal, calling it a calamity. He seeks accountability. The international mission in Afghanistan has carried on for about 2 decades, with the U.S. leading the way. Germany was also involved from the start, offering military and humanitarian services. The final report from the German inquiry is expected by the next February.
An international conference about French and Dutch colonialism in Saint-Martin opens in Baku. The event brings together representatives from Saint-Martin who are advocating against colonialism and for freedom. Participants include leaders of anti-colonial organizations, members of parliament, human rights defenders, NGO leaders, as well as decolonization experts and researchers. The participants discuss the impact of colonialism on the lives of local people and restrictions on political freedoms. Researchers emphasize that the colonial legacy on the island continues to exert a negative influence in both economic and political spheres.
France and Holland has sort of tell the international world that they have no more colonies. All the islands are free. And what we do is that we romanticize the aspect of autonomy between France and Holland. So the international world doesn't know about St. Martin. The people of St. Martin have been fighting for over 40, 60 years. My mother started this fight. My mother started this fight 40 years ago. And the only recourse we have is to go to France and go to Holland and speak in France and Holland. But to go to the United Nations, there is no legal course.
Well, the mechanisms that are available for us as St. Martin, being a colony from Holland, is that it's very limited because there is no international support in the sense of we are not allowed to go directly out in the world and let the people know what is happening to us. Everything that is on a legal basis and official basis has to be done through Holland or with the approval of Holland. That's the reason why we are seeking support with alliance, with allegiance, with other country that has experienced, the decolonization process that can assist us in the different ways and different steps on how to achieve this.
Before the United Nations, both the Republic of France and the Kingdom of the Netherlands maintain that they do not have any more colonies. Now, the reality is different, and that is why we're here. That is what we're trying to let the world know, that what both France and the Kingdom of the Netherlands are saying is not true, because we remain, we have been, and continue to be colonies in every sense of the word.
We received our separate status in 2010. We were part of the constellation of the Netherlands Antilles, which initially was made up of 6 islands, and then ultimately 5. Aruba opted out in 1986. So the 2 referendums in which we had after, in 1994 and then again in 2000, was the dismantling of the Netherlands Antilles. So for us, the legal channel to take will, of course, be to invoke another referendum so that the voices of this country would be heard, whether it is they want to remain a colonized country or to opt out and be an independent country.
With more and more tourists flocking to China for its beautiful snowy landscapes, the country is now expanding its winter tourism offerings to meet growing demand.
As winter approaches, more tourists are rushing to China to experience the stunning snowy landscapes. To meet the growing demand, China has expanded its measures by offering ski resorts, scenic spots, hot springs and hotels, which are the main tourist boost for the winter economy. Data from travel platforms reveals that ski hotels in northern China have seen a 22% increase in bookings year-on-year, putting pressure on resorts to enhance their service.
Our homestay hotel has added a dozen of new snow view rooms of various types. Our supermarket and restaurant are also ready for service.
Northern provinces are leading the charge to boost winter tourism. Ski resorts like Beidao in Jilin expect record-breaking numbers, with tourism revenue projected to reach $75.8 million.
We expect that the Beidao ski resort will receive more than 1 million tourists, with the tourism revenue reaching 550 million yuan.
China's ambitious strategy to expand its ice and snow economy plans to generate around $208.7 billion by 2030.
That'll do it for us. Thank you so much for watching AnewZ. Please stand by and visit our website, anews.tv. Have a great evening and a good day.